Hey everyone, and welcome back to Bridging the Gap. Make sure to leave a like on this video down below and subscribe. My name is Alvin. I lean right on most issues, and I'll be representing the Republican side.
My name is Luke. I lean left on most issues, and I'll be representing the Democratic side. Hey guys, so in this video, Alvin and I will be giving you guys our bipartisan takes on Trump's speech to the joint session of Congress. It's not technically, I was hesitating there because it's not technically a State of the Union, but more or less functions as such. Big speech.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for all intents and purposes, this is a State of the Union. And as most of you will probably know, because you're watching a political channel and you're probably very well informed, keep up to date on this type of stuff. The president traditionally gives a speech to Congress every single year. Every single member of Congress is there. Usually, Supreme Court justices are there, his cabinet's there, except one person, and so on. Very important political figures. Basically, the entire elite political class is there at this speech, and usually it's called the State of the Union. The first one for each president isn't because he's only been in office for 6 weeks, but regardless, this speech was very big and very important. Likely his most important speech um, for just setting expectations for his term and his most important speech, except maybe the inaugural address so
Yeah.
far for Trump number two, and it was a big one as I just noted. Trump's address averaged 36.6 million viewers, so the unique viewer count could be even higher. That's a big swath of the
Hmm.
country, and that is higher than what Biden got, plus 13% over Biden's last so too. So that's a pretty
Oh,
big
wow.
mark, a few million more actually. So that's actually good numbers for Trump, especially because if you've been keeping up with the media recently, these counts really only count like big networks, the biggest networks that
Hmm.
track their ratings. More and more people have now tuned into sort of non-traditional media,
Yeah.
so this number might even be an undercount.
Oh, yeah. So I guess we should start with the takeaways of the speech. So obviously, State of the Union speech, Trump's out here outlining his achievements in the first 40 or so days, and also what else he's looking to accomplish going forward. Before we get to that, I suppose, um, I mean, actually, how do you want to approach this, Alvin? Should we start with basically the division that the speech arose, or should we start with the achievements? What do you reckon?
We can start with the achievements because the division can go into the approval
Yes,
ratings.
yes.
So
Okay. So I guess first 40 days, Trump administration, he did a lot of talk about the Doge spending cuts. I think that's the most notable thing. There was a period in the speech where he kind of just rattled off on all the Department of Government efficiency cuts made so far. Um, Obviously it's Trump, so there's a bunch of exaggeration and all that. But, ultimately it amounts to a couple $1 billion as of right now. Um, as a Democrat, it's like, yay, we're making spending cuts, but it's a drop in the bucket compared to the trillions and trillions of dollars in the U.S. Budget. But yeah, I mean, I guess there was a lot of talk of that. There was a lot of talk of the economy. Uh, Obviously, the economy is not in the greatest place right now, with inflation still sort of creeping upward. So I guess he kind of just took that opportunity to place a lot of the blame on Biden and the Biden administration, even though egg prices, for example, continue to rise. What else did we talk about? Oh, also the border. Border crossings have been declining, and there have been an increase in deportations in the country. So, Trump obviously has been trumpeted that over over the State of the Union here. Is there anything else I'm missing?
yeah, Ukraine is a big one that you're missing
Hmm.
here, where Trump definitely made sure to mention Ukraine. It's been a big issue in the past week or so in the political world, I guess. And we'll definitely do a bigger video on Ukraine in the future. But yeah, I'd say you hit most of the major points. He made sure to sort of highlight what he's gotten done so far. A lot of the executive orders that he's
Oh,
talked
yes, yes.
he spoke about, because really that's all he's done, except maybe one or two big pieces of legislation like the Lake and Riley Act,
Hmm.
which he made sure to highlight, which was, a big bipartisan accomplishment for him as well. So he's gotten some stuff done. He's talked about it, but he really spent more of the speech um, making it into a big Trump speech. I mean, he every single one of these where it's Trump is like that sort of. It reads like a campaign speech. It sort of is a campaign speech, even though he's not campaigning again.
Hmm.
He's sort of campaigning for the blessing of the American people here as he does some more controversial stuff. I mean, you're right about the economy. The tariffs have for some not so good response from the stock market here. And
Oh,
I know
yeah.
Trump definitely tracks the stock market as a businessman, so he definitely sees the negativity there. I mean, that probably led to him today even suspending the tariffs on automakers for another month. So that actually boosted the stock market a few percent today. But
Hmm.
regardless of that, yeah, he told the American public to bear with him with the tariffs. The inflation has, like you said, been creeping up, and it has been since the last 2 months of the Biden administration,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so, yeah, I would say maybe one more thing I'll get into before we move on were his guests. I think his guests were actually more significant than almost any other group of guests that I've seen. I don't remember Biden or Trump first term having this good of a selection of guests. I would say that the guests were probably the most uniting part of the speech, and we'll talk about the division in a second. But the guests, were sort of more uniting. Of course, he had Lake and Riley, who had just talked about her family members, which that was a bipartisan achievement. And so he definitely wanted to highlight how he wants to, his strongest issue is probably still immigration. So he wants to highlight how he's being tough on illegal aliens. He gave this little kid with brain cancer. He became a Secret Service agent, and that was one of the more wholesome moments of the night. He talked about Mark Fogel, who he got out of Russia in a recent peace deal. This was one of the only times where we could see Democrats clapping in the crowd, because that's sort of non-controversial. We want our Americans back, and
Hmm.
yeah, I would say you have he knows the strong issues like trans issues in sports, and he had some guests discussing porn on the internet, which
Oh, yeah,
is
deep
also
fakes,
very
yeah.
uniting issues. So his guests are definitely uniting there.
Yep. And then onto the next bit. There was a lot of obviously future focus in the speech too that I would like to touch on. Um, Particularly, I think the most notable thing. So there's a couple new announcements. Um, I'm gonna just roll through them here. So like one of them was, it's basically replicating Israel's Iron Dome defense, which we funded. It's really cool, kind of Star Wars-esque defense that like shoots missiles out of the sky,
Yeah.
short-range rockets. He wants to get one of those for the cities of the United States and call it the Golden Dome. Um, I mean, I'm not sure we exactly need that right now, but that was one of the initiatives he announced. Also, reciprocal tariffs, which I thought were notable. So any tariffs countries raise on us, because we're obviously raising tariffs on countries around the world, like the Canada and Mexico. Any retaliatory tariffs the U.S. receives in April, the U.S. will do reciprocal tariffs, so just raise them even higher in turn. Um, again, it's kind of like, Trump has been using this tariff weapon pretty consistently, this economic warfare. Um, I think it's definitely going to come back and bite us a bit in terms of like the economy. It's definitely going to raise prices, but I imagine he's hoping to try to intimidate other countries into not raising tariffs on U.S. goods. Not sure it'll work, but he could try. Um, Also, he announced that he would want to get rid of or repeal the Biden Chips and Science Act, which basically had the goal of moving the semiconductor industry into the United States, out of places like Taiwan and foreign countries. I, I, I just don't see how that's a good idea because Republicans voted for that bill. It was a bipartisan bill, just try to like move the industry in the United States, and it's been pretty successful so far. So he spoke out against that. And then the other like major announcements, or like, this is just a reiteration of prior things, but he again talked about the idea of potentially annexing Greenland from the Danes and the Panama Canal from Panama. So the continuous foreign aggression, trying to just go around annexing territories around the world.
Yeah, there was definitely some controversial stuff spoken about here in this speech, and for sure there's been good amounts of polling. We do love looking at polling on this channel of how a few of Trump's proposed policies are becoming unpopular with the American public. And that sort of translates to the next part of our video, which is Trump's approval rating. Now, a quick note before we begin this section, this is probably the last time we're ever going to be on this website, 538, unless somehow they make a comeback or something happens here. But or we're looking at old articles, I suppose. But 538 here is shutting down one of the major political analysis and electoral analysis
So
specifically.
sad.
Yeah, very sad day for a lot of us in the electoral sort of political media, and I guess we can call ourselves that, right? And
Yeah.
it's been hated on, it's been loved, it's been applauded, and
Yeah.
it's been definitely controversial at times, but all in all, very sad to see it go. But right before it went away, Trump barely dipped into the disapprove, net disapprove. So that's a little ironic to see how that is the last day. But they were working until the last minute to put in all the polls, and Trump's going to be disapproved of here on the final day of 538. And we see this trend where voters start out with most presidencies giving the president more leeway. They give him a mandate. I mean, especially when they win the popular vote, as Trump did here. They're
Hmm.
trying to give him some time. But he's still a very controversial figure. He was never going to be given the honeymoons that Obama or Biden got, as they were less controversial figures. And here we already see him going disapprove. The American people have tried to give him more room in terms of fixing the economy, with his proposal of tariffs, for example. Let's just start there, where the American people have been trying to give him more time. As a new presidency, usually you get that sort of time at the beginning, but they are starting to sour on Trump. I'm sure a lot of that has to do with the stock market, but
Yeah.
Americans are starting to sour on him. I mean, his numbers on the economy, traditionally his one of his strongest issues, next to immigration, have now fallen underwater in many recent polls, which is not going to be good for the Trump administration to
Hmm.
keep claiming that mandate, right? And a lot of these polls have been coming in. I mean, I will say we never really touched on this like ever, but if we can go to the direction of the country polls, or the chart here, Trump did enjoy a big boost as soon
Hmm.
as he was sworn into office on the sort of wrong track versus right direction. You see, when he first came into office, he didn't really get that big of a boost, but Biden did, right? And now we see he gets a big boost, but it's sort of slowing down here, in the past few days. It's sort of slowed down a little, and it might start turning back the other way. So we'll see. It was a big boost, and Trump did highlight in his
Yeah.
speech. But yeah,
Yeah, I do think it's notable how, some of Trump's approval polling, especially on the economy, is looking pretty unhealthy. Like, I mean, even going back to like 2020, even with like the COVID pandemic, a lot of people cut him some slack and like, yeah, his handling of the economy is still ultimately good. And that's like the one real thing Trump had going for him going into 2020. Now, even that is kind of seems to be slipping away here, as I think a lot of voters are frustrated in the fact that they voted for Trump and thought the economic problems in the country would just go away. And obviously, the president, like, it takes time for that stuff to kind of sink in usually. um, but there's between that and Trump's harmful economic policies that would increase inflation, like tariffs. Yeah, it's just not looking good.
yeah. I mean, as we said during the Biden presidency, as you highlighted often, the president doesn't exactly just get to fix the economy how they want. If they did, then the economy would
Yeah,
always be good.
that's true.
But we're gonna see how this plays out in the near future. Um, is this tariff thing, another bluff as we saw a month ago? Or, is this really gonna start going crazy? I mean, he already pulled back the tariffs a little bit
Yep.
today. We might see his I believe his Commerce Secretary, Howard Lutnick, also hinted at potentially just striking another deal with Canada and Mexico. It seems like we might be headed towards that yet again. If you saw that comment by Howard Lutnick, I don't know.
Hmm.
But yeah, that's sort of stuff that we've been seeing from Trump, where he sort of threatens one thing and then goes back. And we don't know if that's really going to happen this time around. He does seem to really like his tariffs, but at the end of the day, I do think he likes seeing his approval numbers a little more than his tariffs. So we're going to be seeing that in the future. Now, I guess we'll move on now to, oh, actually, before we move on to the Democratic response, I do want to say that the Trump approval numbers were pretty
For the
good for his
speech,
speech.
yeah.
However, we do have to note, yeah, right. I just want to highlight this before we move on off the speech, that Trump's approval numbers were good. However, his audience was already very favorable. So this is sort of a little misleading.
Uh,
You have 76% of viewers, right? It's among speech watchers. It's not among Americans. It's among speech watchers. 70%, 76% approved. Now, I will note that it is still a good portion of, like independent slash Democrats, because if we do look at the Wikipedia here, only 51% of viewers were Republicans. So to reach that 76%, you'd have to pull pretty much
some
all of the
indies, yeah.
independents here. You'd have to pull basically every single indie or
Hmm.
some Democrats. So he very likely got some Democrat support here. Like I mentioned earlier, some parts of the speech were unifying, but it was somewhat limited. But maybe independents just really liked what he said. Maybe this will
Hmm.
actually give him a slight bump in his approval rating. We will see. But it was a big audience, and it was good numbers for him.
Yeah.
So might see a slight bump for him in a bit. But now I guess we'll talk about the Democratic response given by Senator Elissa Slotkin.
Yeah, I mean, just one more thing on the Trump speech that before I start speaking on the Democratic
Oh yeah,
response,
sure.
is that it was one just observing it, it was definitely one of the most divisive State of the Union speeches in American history. Mainly in the fact, well, part of it was Trump's rhetoric. Obviously, like Trump does, he takes shots at Biden, well, which is to be expected, and he took shots at the Democrats in Congress, for example, and at a lot of like bipartisan legislation, like the CHIPS Act. He took a portion of the speech when he was talking about Ukraine aid, and Elizabeth Warren was clapping for him. He called her Pocahontas like he does. Um, and lots of definitely attacks on the left by Trump. Like yeah, like you would expect. But another portion of this is obviously the Democrats were clearly in Congress were definitely not having it. Um, there's this joint committee for escorting the president, through the Capitol building. This is like the first time I've ever heard that the Democrats haven't been a part of it. So it wasn't bipartisan this time around. The Democrats were not part of that committee escorting Trump through the Capitol. They refused to shake his hand. Usually when the president walks in, he like as he walks down the aisle, he shakes hands with people both sides. Democrats just outright refused. You had Democrats walking out during the speech. At the beginning of the speech, you had a representative, Al Green, basically stand up and just yell at the president for like a minute straight before Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, got involved and removed him. So yeah, like that's like something else that I feel was notable. It's just like the sheer division of the speech. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I definitely see where you're coming from. Very divided on how the Democrats want to, like this article says, resist Trump. I mean, you
Yeah,
have the sort of more feisty types like Al Green. He wants to sort of make a scene. He wants to show America that like the Democrats are trying to do something. But a lot of
yeah,
Democrats think, look, we have no power in Congress. Like
yeah,
we don't have anything right now. We don't even have the judicial branch. We don't have the presidency. We don't have Congress. And really, the only thing keeping us from entire Republican control is the filibuster in the Senate. And technically, if Republicans wanted, the filibuster would be gone. So, really, Democrats are trying to just wait it out. And a lot of them think that the best way to resist Trump is actually just sort of play dead, sort of be quiet here. And if they are quiet long enough, they're hoping that Trump's economic policy will be damaging, at least in the short term, and sort of turn the American people on him. And
Yeah.
that will be when they start the resistance, sort of, and start coming out and making big speeches and whatever, because right now Democrats haven't had the momentum since they lost in November. They've basically had nothing since November, and so it's very difficult. They've been out of power, and a lot of them just want to chill. And we see a lot of this too with like senators, retiring. They still want to be in the minority now because for the foreseeable future, Democrats will be in the minority in the Senate, and
Yep.
I'm sure we'll see House retirements too soon. But look, it's difficult to be a Democrat nowadays, especially in the political elite. And sort of a lot of people sort of in the Democratic base want to see more Al Greens. They want to see more resistance, but Democrats are like, look, we can't even do anything about it. So, um, yeah, I guess that leads us here to the Democratic response. Now, I will say some of the lines in the Democratic response were strong, but overall, I did think that there was a lot of mixed response to the speech. I guess we'll get Luke's sort of opinion in a second, but uh, I think a lot of Democrats who were watching the speech had some mixed feelings about the speech. Some people were applauding the speech, thinking it was a very good response, very strong response, with lines such as this Cold War line, which was strong. But some people thought, like, look, Slotkin could have done better, and also they thought that Democrats in the chamber could have done better and done better than just holding up their little signs that read some little catchphrase. What did you think about the Democratic response and Slotkin?
Okay, well, I mean, on the topic of the Democrats, kind of rebelling in the Congress, I really don't have much of a position. Like, I think the sign holding and stuff was a fine response. Like, it's fair enough. I mean, like they're just trying to voice opposition silently. They didn't clap for basically anything he said, and a lot of what he said was divisive. So I think that was fair enough. I still haven't really developed my position on Al Green, kind of standing up and ranting at Trump. Ultimately, I don't think it's going to matter much because he was just kind of dragged out of the chamber. So, like, whatever. I mean, they tried. I feel like,
Interesting.
when you're sitting in the seats of Congress, like, I don't know. I feel like the opposition doesn't really start there for me. You know what I mean? Um, I feel like it has to be more than just like voicing dissent during a speech. Uh, so I don't know. Like I think for that being the start of the hashtag resistance this time around, I don't think that's where it's going to come from. On the topic of Slotkin's speech, I actually do think the response to the State of the Union, like a coherent, like actual responding to the points of it, that has the potential to be the start of a resistance. Personally, I wasn't like crazy about the selection of Slotkin, a relatively new senator to the fray. I would personally have preferred like a Chris Murphy, for example, someone who's proven to be very articulate so far during the Trump administration in voicing his opposition. But in terms of the quality of the speech, I think it was a great speech. There's definitely she comes from the more moderate wing of the party. Like she was able to win a state that Trump won. So Trump won the state of Michigan, and she won the Senate seat there at the same time. So she's able to win those more moderate, swingy voters. And she gave a relatively moderate and unifying speech. Like, obviously you mentioned the Reagan line. She gave a callback to the days of Ronald Reagan and how he'd actually support our alliances around the world and how that is inherently opposed to what Trump is doing, like kind of breaking down our alliances. And she also just kind of gave a call to people who are against what Trump is doing to organize and stay engaged. Because yeah, like that is a problem the Democrats are having right now. There's so much going on that people are just, and obviously people are just tired of from election fatigue, for example. After that whole election campaign in 2024, people are tired. Liberals are tired. And she's just trying to. It was a good speech at like rallying them, saying have hope, but actually also have the courage to take action. So in those respects, I think it was a fine speech. obviously I don't think our response to the State of the Union isn't really going to go down in history unless it's like an amazing blunder like we saw in 2013 with like Rubio or like Katie Britt's slightly creepy speech last year. But ultimately, like these speeches don't typically matter. She gave like an all right speech.
Even those speeches were forgotten soon after.
Yes, they were.
I mean, look, the speech, like I said, I mean, we can both agree it was probably around average, maybe a little above
Yeah.
average in some Democrats' eyes, maybe a little below average in some Republicans' eyes, but pretty standard. I will push back a little on the idea that she's a moderate. I will say, unless
Oh yeah, yeah.
proven in the Senate, I think she's sort of just like a generic Democrat, like a party line vote. Haven't seen her behave otherwise during her time in the House. Haven't seen her
I
behave
mean,
that way in the
she voted.
Senate.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I don't know how she's going to behave during the Trump administration. It seems like she's like, I mean, for example, she was one of the couple Senate Dems to vote for the Lake and Riley Act. So, like, I mean, I guess in some respect, she's shown
Okay,
that she's
maybe a
open to
little
the new
bit, but
administration.
she's
She's no
no
Manchin.
true moderate.
Yeah,
She's
she's
no
no
Manchin
Manchin.
or Collins. She's more
Yes,
of a generic Democrat that more or less knows her place as someone that got elected in a Trump state, and
yes.
will need to win re-election in a few years. So she's more of that. But I mean, yeah, in terms of the Al Green thing, look, I mean, 80% of people disapproved of uh Al's Al Green's behavior. So maybe don't do that. But
Hmm.
regardless, maybe you're in the 20%. I don't know, but I definitely agree with the 80% that it is inappropriate and sort of out of line. But regardless, that was sort of it for this video. Um, Trump gives his first quasi State of the Union here. And
Yeah.
Democrats recruit Elissa Slotkin to give the Democratic response, which both were um, sort of more, I guess one would say that they were very partisan. I mean, one could say that they were a little more unifying in some parts, but either way, we have this sort of dichotomy here, and we will see how the Trump administration will continue into March as they finish up their first 100 days. And we'll definitely be giving you guys updates on what happens with current events. We'll be talking about the New York City mayoral election very shortly,
Yeah.
with some big news there for sure, and some state elections coming up soon, like Wisconsin. Big race there. So, any last words before we end the video?
Um, Nothing in particular. I just think we're entering a very divided time, and it'll be interesting to see how politics evolve.
Yeah, I mean, we've been divided for a while though, so nothing
I
new
mean,
here.
yeah, that's true.
So it's all right. I mean, that's why we have channels like Bridging the Gap, right? So anyways, thanks so much for watching, everyone. Leave a like on this video down below. Comment down below any future video suggestions you have for us, and subscribe to the channel down below so you don't miss our future videos. But thanks for watching, and share this video with your family and friends.
See you guys.